The Hall of the United Nations once again bore witness to history in the making. A chamber that had seen Cold War face-offs, peace negotiations, and post-war reckonings now stood charged with a different energy, tense, uncertain, and trembling with urgency. The UN Security Council had convened in an emergency session, summoned not by distant policy concerns but by the pounding reality of war. War in the Middle East. War that was no longer a threat but a thunderous fact. At the center of the storm was a name that has long haunted diplomatic discourse, Iran. But this time, it was not just threats, not just rhetoric. This time, the strikes had landed. The missiles had flown. The underground complexes of Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz had been shaken, bombarded, scarred. The United States had acted, in concert, though not officially declared alliance, with Israel. The targets were precise, the message unmistakable: nuclear ambitions would not be tolerated. And now, the world had to pick up the pieces, or else watch them crumble into chaos. António Guterres, Secretary-General of the United Nations, took the floor. His voice was steady, but it carried a tremor, a human weight of knowing too much, having seen too much. He did not mince words. He did not speak as a diplomat but as a global custodian of conscience. This is a dangerous escalation, he warned. A perilous turn in a region already drowning in volatility. His words were not abstract. They carried the weight of bodies buried under rubble, of cities trembling under sirens, of civilians once again becoming collateral. He pleaded, not just with the Council, but with history itself, to halt the descent into another endless cycle of retaliation. The people of the region, he said, cannot endure another cycle of destruction. In the chamber, the tension was palpable. The stakes were no longer theoretical. And from across the table, from the powerful corners of the world, came a proposal, unexpected in its solidarity but urgent in its simplicity. Russia, China, Pakistan, three nations not always aligned in vision, yet now united by the belief that peace must take precedence. They had drafted a resolution. Its purpose was stark, its demand clear: an immediate and unconditional ceasefire across the Middle East. It did not mention names. It did not assign guilt. But it called for an end. An end to airstrikes. An end to provocations. An end to the spiral that now threatened to consume the region, and perhaps more. Whether the resolution would pass was unclear. The United States, France, and Britain, all permanent members with veto power, stood as potential barriers. But the draft existed. It had been written, circulated, and the Council had until Monday evening to respond. The American response. Predictable, but no less impactful. Reports suggested the U.S. would oppose the resolution, especially given that it indirectly condemned the very strikes Washington had just carried out. It was seen as an affront, a challenge to its sovereignty, its judgment, and its strategic intent. Yet the draft said what it needed to say. In bold language, it called for the protection of civilians, the resumption of diplomacy, and an end to the attacks on nuclear facilities, no matter who carried them out. In Tehran, the strikes were being absorbed. Emotionally, strategically, politically. Iranian officials, speaking through gritted teeth and clenched fists, vowed that self-defense would be exercised with all force. They had been here before. But this time, the stakes felt different. The United Nations nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, stood as one of the few bodies offering hard facts amidst the political fog. Rafael Grossi, its Director General, briefed the Council. His words were technical. His delivery, clinical. But the implications, alarming. At Fordo, a mountain-embedded enrichment site, visible craters had been identified. Yet Grossi confessed the truth. No one, including the IAEA, could yet assess the extent of the underground damage. At Isfahan, another critical facility, entrances to tunnels had been struck, tunnels thought to hold enriched uranium. At Natanz, long a target of sabotage and speculation, fresh strikes had once again disrupted its operations. Despite this, Iran claimed that off-site radiation levels remained stable. But for the IAEA, verification was impossible without access, and access, for now, was suspended. In the background, behind the missiles and the diplomacy, another theater was stirring: Moscow. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, had landed there. The message was clear: Tehran was rallying allies. State media framed the visit as a response to aggression. But beneath the rhetoric lay real strategy. Iran was recalibrating. Reaching out to Moscow was not mere protocol, it was positioning. It was a signal to the West that Tehran was not isolated. That while Washington and Tel Aviv might strike, others were willing to listen, and perhaps even support. And then came the real shockwave. President Donald Trump, standing before a global audience, declared with characteristic bluntness that the United States had obliterated key Iranian nuclear sites. One word, obliterated, echoed far beyond its podium. It was not just a military term. It was psychological warfare. It was a warning to adversaries, a message to allies, and a challenge to institutions like the United Nations. The Islamic Republic had requested this very council meeting. It wanted not only dialogue but condemnation. It labeled the US and Israeli actions as blatant and unlawful aggression, and demanded the world respond. Would the world listen? Would the resolution pass? Or would it be buried beneath layers of geopolitics and vetoes? The Security Council chamber held its breath. Across the globe, nations watched. In markets, investors hesitated. In mosques and churches, prayers rose. And in every embassy from Ankara to Berlin, phones rang off the hook. Because this was not just about Iran. It was about a global order teetering on the edge. It was about whether diplomacy could still matter in an age of drones and dominance. It was about whether peace was still a possibility, or merely a word in the mouths of men who no longer believed it. And somewhere, in the shadows of Isfahan's ruins and Fordo's silence, sat scientists and soldiers, waiting. Wondering if the next attack would come. Wondering if the red lines had already been crossed. This is